Hello everyone. Welcome to our webinar on preparing for next generation e-learning, part 2. We're going to be covering social learning and DIY, do-it-yourself approach. Good morning, afternoon from whichever part of the world you join us from. Thank you for being with us today. My name is Sanjay and I'm a marketing executive at Upside Learning. I'm going to be doing a quick introduction before we get on with the webinar. There's a few housekeeping things I have to go over. You will be receiving the recording of this webinar via an email. We have some polls lined up for you during the course of the webinar, so please do participate. And lastly, feel free to ask any questions from our experts using the chat facility. Now just a bit about the company, Upside Learning. For 10 years, we've been helping organizations of different sizes and types to improve performance through better learning. With our head office in India, we serve clients in the UK, USA, Australia, Middle East, North Africa, and other countries. A wide range of innovative learning solutions include Upside LMS, a multi-award-winning learning management system, Upside to Go, a mobile performance support platform, and custom learning solutions for desktops, tablets, and smartphones. We've been recognized and awarded by Brandon Hall, Training Industry, Deloitte, CLO, Apex, Red Herring, and have won the award for the eLearning Team of the Year for 2013 by eLearning Age Awards. And here's a quick snapshot of some of the clients we work with. Alright then, so let's begin the webinar, shall we? It's my pleasure to introduce to you the speakers. Amit Garg, Director of Custom Learning Solutions, and Jeevan Joshi, Director of Client Solutions of Asia Pacific for Upside Learning. Amit, the stage is yours.
Thanks, Sanjay. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from today. Thank you very much for joining us. This is, as Sanjay mentioned, the second session or second part of this series. The first one covered responsive e-learning and tin can. You could find the recording of that on our website if you wish to. In this one, we are covering social learning and DIY content. So let's get started. We have a couple of polls to begin the social learning section, and we'll just get over with them in quick 2-3 minutes. So the first one is up here for you, which is, are you using any social learning in your workplace? So please use the poll window that would have appeared. So I say about 55% have voted, 60%. All right, so most of you have now voted. We could close that and we see 33% are using some social learning in the workplace, while 67% are not as of now. We'll hide these results and move on to the second one. The question is pretty similar, which is actually on using social media. The previous one was on social learning. This one is just on social media. Are you using any social media in your organization? Great, so about 80% of you have voted, and we have a 50-50 here. So a little different from the usage of social learning, which is obviously not exactly the same of just using social media. But yes, let's move forward. There's a fair proportion of you who are already using social learning, so we could possibly gain some insights from you as well through the chat window. So please do keep chipping in if you have any thoughts or you want to ask a question while we go ahead with this presentation. So we'll move ahead and start with, obviously, just first understanding what is social learning. Quickly, here is a definition of what is called social learning theory given by Albert Bandura in 77. And I'll let you take a moment to read through this. As you may have noticed, the key emphasis here is on observations, that is learning by observing others, which may not be really the same as the social learning that we are talking of for the workplace. So just so that we are not confused with the social learning theory, because this is what it is, versus the social learning that we are going to use in workplaces. Social learning theory is something that we have been exposed to since our childhood. We have been kind of pretending to be like our parents, doing exactly how they do, learning from our siblings, especially the elder ones, friends. So we try to imitate and ape those behaviors, and that's largely by observing them, what they do, and that's something that comes to all of us very naturally. But social learning, in terms of definitions from two leading thought leaders here, the first one is from Marcia Connor, who's the co-author of this book called The New Social Learning, and she says social learning is participating with others to make sense of new ideas. And the other definition is from Jane Hart. She has a social learning handbook on our website if you wish to access that. She says social learning is the natural continuous process of learning with and from others. The key difference between the social learning theory we just shared on the previous slide and these two definitions is the participation and learning with others rather than just learning from others. So you could learn from others, observational learning, and it would be part of the social learning, but there is a more critical aspect and I think more applicable to the workplace, which is about sharing, commenting, seeking feedback, asking questions. So there is a bit of give and take and participation where you can learn with others in social learning. Of course, social learning is not new. We all know that. It's been practically been the only way the human beings have learned till the formal classroom settings arrived, and that's not been too far long in history. But yes, with the formal classrooms and institutes and training programs, the focus has largely been on the formal structures. With social media, there is a growing focus on social learning because now the tools are available really to enable and empower social learning for digitally or geographically spread out audiences and staff members through digital media. But as we just saw in the poll that we conducted, just using social media would not guarantee social learning. So you'll have to do more than just allowing social media in your enterprise. And we'll see what can be done. So why should you be looking at social learning? What is really the need for even bothering about social learning? Number one is, I think, this model, which I'm sure you've heard of, the 70-20-10, which has been kind of very popular in all the discussion circles at all the L&D events, etc. And a lot of organizations have even tried to implement this in some form, take measures on how to do this. There are products which claim to support this model, etc. What it really says is that most of the learning is happening outside the formal structures of classrooms and courses. So it may be through mentoring and coaching or on-the-job experience, but a bulk of your learning really is happening outside the formal structures. We don't particularly align with this model. We actually, I personally like this model more, which is the pervasive learning model given by Don Pontifact, and this is actually the 333 approximation model, where he believes that there are the formal, informal, and social are all divided about 33% each in how learning happens. And again, I'm sure you understand that none of the models are right. Just some of them are useful. So it is up to us which ones we really want to use and which ones we're more comfortable with, which ones align more to our organization and structure of learning that happens in our organizations. whatever be the model, again, which you are comfortable with, the fact is that a lot of learning is happening outside the formal domain. So you should be looking at doing something about social learning in your organization. The second key reason I believe is that social learning, along with mobile and communities of practice, etc., is enabling the creation of continuous learning model in organizations, which is quite different from the traditional learning model that we have been used to, which is about, having a training event and then letting the learning actually wither away over a period of time. The retention is lost, which is quite natural. But with social and mobile and communities of practice, etc., all of these are really helping to maintain that level of learning at more continuous, more when required, just in time, keeping the most optimum level in the workforce. And the last reason is because the millennials are coming. By one estimate, about 50% of your workforce by 2020 will be millennials. And millennials have a different way of looking at things, how they consume media, how they consume information, how they work, etc. Here's a quick, 3 important aspects from a survey that was done by Cisco in 2011, calling the Connected World Technology Report of about 2,800 students. And what came out was 2/3 of those students, which essentially are kind of representative of the millennials, they would prefer internet access over a car if they were offered. 3/10 of them expect working remotely to be their right and not just a facility that an organization will give them. And 3/5 of them would actually accept a lower paying job if they got more flexibility to choose what devices they can work on, they had access to social media and mobility. So this is a different kind of workforce that we are going to see in the coming days. So it is better to get prepared for the kind of learning that we can possibly facilitate in our organizations with this kind of workforce, which is going to be more distributed, more mobile, more available on social media, etc. So those are the key reasons why we should be looking at social learning. But yes, there is also this term which is quite confusing to some, which is informal learning, and we'll take a moment to differentiate between the two. But what is really informal learning? This is from Jay Cross, who's the person who's very, very reputed in the informal learning field, and he's been writing articles, and his blog is well respected. It's called informal.com. But he says informal learning is the unofficial, unscheduled, impromptu way of learning. And he compares informal learning to riding a bicycle, where you can choose the destination, the route, etc., and you can take a detour when you want. While he says formal learning is like riding a bus. The driver decides where you're going and you are essentially a passenger. Very importantly, he also says that people who are new to a particular territory, which is like people being introduced to the organization or to new roles, would often ride the bus before getting onto a bike. So formal would become a part of their initial training, but then I think they would depend more on the informal aspects. But how does it, doesn't really sound like social. There is elements of social in that. So here is a matrix that kind of tries to see the difference between the two and place them where they should be. So you have this matrix on one axis you have formal, informal, on the other you have individual versus social. So essentially in individual, informal, you are looking at like reading, listening, watching, essentially doing things that you do. It could also include searching on the web, all of those things. Within social, informal, you have teams which are working and learning together. In individual, formal, you have taking e-learning courses or sitting through a program, etc. And in a formal social, you have cohorts or learning with others on a particular course or a project or something. So if you can see, there is social which is actually going beyond the formal, and it's also there in informal. So both of those, formal and informal, can have social components to it. This is what the social formal thing could be really referred to as the social training. So within social, the social formal could be really referred to as social training, while the social informal can be referred to as social collaboration. So essentially we are saying that there are two types of social that you may be really focusing on, depending on whether they are formal or informal. So there is social training and social collaboration. Within social training, you are really kind of trying to build some, conversations, debates, learning with each other on a program. So you could possibly do that by creating learning communities, discussion forums around the curriculum, around a training program. So it is more focused around that particular program. But social collaboration is slightly more open-ended sometimes, or it could be more related to projects, something which they are doing. So you create communities of practice which would be more long-term, open, and you can have work and project-based teams which are more short-term. But that's more related to work rather than just training. Burson also offers a perspective on where social and informal kind of get placed. They actually believe social is just one form of the informal. There are three types of informal, they say: on-demand, social, and embedded. And this has been said more in with the context of mobile, saying that mobile is really the enabler or the accelerator and a transformational opportunity. So within this, you can see, informal is having three different forms, and social just forms one of them. So getting on to our main agenda item today, which is how to really make it happen. What can you do to, or we can't really say make, do social learning in your organization. You can only facilitate, you can encourage, you can create an environment, etc. But you can't really make people do social. You can't really make people do informal. These are things that people have to do. You are only facilitators. But what can you still do? Because it is going to be an important area, and we need to really optimize this aspect. So first of all, what are the key barriers which would help us understand exactly what needs to be done and what should be our focus areas when you get down doing something with social. This is from an HCM group report called A Pulse on Social Learning, which says that the top challenges for implementing social learning in organizations have been adoption by employees, quite understandable, quite expected. Difficulty measuring the impact. Again, I think the measuring impact of even formal training programs is very difficult in organizations, especially the business impact. It would be even more difficult for the informal and social programs. The time it takes, yes, a lot of organizations have assumed that it will happen on its own and nobody really need to manage communities or be the seeders, seeding discussions, etc. But yes, it requires a lot of time to do that, even though it is not something that you're doing formally in a structured environment. There have to be people who are devoting time to make informal social happen in your organization. Buy-in from leadership is absolutely critical. In fact, we believe they should be involved in showcasing, in kind of leading from the front in doing some of these activities. Integrating social learning with LMSs and other infrastructure. Again, if your LMS allows some social learning to happen, particularly around curriculums, that should be great. But if you're going beyond that and building communities of practice and your own system doesn't allow that, you might be combining two systems, and that could sometimes be a challenge, especially when you want to transfer content generated in the social learning communities to the LMS for future use in some sort of formal programs. And that's really where the loop gets completed. And worries about employees wasting time. That's something which is reducing. It has been very high on the barriers list when the social media arrived. but it has been reducing as organizations see some of the benefits of social media. So here is a list of things we recommend that you should be doing. Start with objectives. Of course, this is the simplest to suggest. Like anything that you do, you should start with objectives. But what kind of objectives can you have for social learning? Previous or case studies have shown that if you have these kind of objectives in mind, you would possibly be able to align teams and processes around these much better to enable social learning in your organization. So you could possibly think about increasing innovation in your organization or increasing the sales win rates. So there could be a portal that you create only for the sales guys where you have case studies, trainings, everything there. People can comment on those and ask questions based on the situations they are facing, with their colleagues, etc. So that could be one type of objective. You could possibly look at reducing cost or improving productivity. You could look at reducing staff turnover, improving customer satisfaction. That's an area that a lot of companies have really started their social learning with, where they are actually interacting with their customers over social media with an objective of increasing customer satisfaction, and it percolates down inside the organization to have social learning inside as well. So those are some of the type of objectives that you can look at when you get started. Supporting with tools is important to really identify what kind of tools. Of course, the most important social learning tool ever invented was the water cooler, and it's still very relevant in organizations, but has limitations of not being able to stretch beyond the boundaries of a geographical setup. So if you have to get people across different offices, different geographies, different continents connected, you probably need some sort of a digital water cooler. And there are a lot of digital water coolers per se. There are so many tools that are available now that can be utilized. You have to choose one which works best for you. One key differentiation between these tools, if you place them into two different buckets, and I'll come to that in a moment. Sorry, this is a slide on various technologies that are being used, in social learning. Again, from the same survey, the pulse of social learning from HCM group. The biggest that is being used, or the most that is being used, is discussion forums, internet blogs, internet instant messaging, communities of practice, videos, wikis, etc. So the key differentiation between two buckets of tools would be whether they are private or public, and they both give you certain benefits against the other. So you could have a private set of tools which will give you more control, it will be more secure, and it will be maybe even customized to your organization's needs. But the public ones will be providing more familiarity to your people, because they would have been using those tools in their personal lives, maybe Facebooks and Twitters. Most of your employees might already be on that. It will be less cost because it is on a publicly available tool, sometimes even free. And it also provides access to external experts, because if you have a private tool, it would be probably firewalled, and you will be discussing things only within the confines of your organization. So when you're looking for innovation and ideas, and especially in the fast growing, fast emerging fields, you possibly want to connect with experts outside as well. So depending on what your objectives are, you may want to decide on tools. Then you have policies that need to be set in. So setting social media policies is not easy. In fact, the lesser the better is really the theme that has been seen. There is this website which you may want to go to, which is socialmediagovernance.com, and it has a list of policies from more than, I think, 100 organizations, their social media policies. You may want to look at those organizations in your domain, your size, your country, etc., and just see what kind of policies they are adopting, and it would give you a good starting point. One of the policies that was quite in news some time ago was the 3 R's at Telstra, and it is available at the link that is shared at the bottom of this slide. And the 3 R's really stand for representing yourself, so not being anonymous, putting a proper name to who you are on the social media, taking responsibility of what you do, and showing respect to everyone that you interact with, institutions, individuals, etc. So essentially just these three, and that's their social media policy. And they have created a training program, which is the screenshot is from their training program, and the link is again at the bottom. So you need to decide on those policies and create programs around that so that your people are fully aware and comfortable and confident when they're using social media, so that they don't know, they don't think that something might go wrong and they would be in a problem. So you need to give that confidence to them with these policies clearly spelled out. Content is an area that you should think of, though conversations are really the content for social learning. But sometimes you need the content to seed ideas, to start a discussion, to support an argument, etc. So, you could lead people to certain content, etc. So that is where you're looking at kind of merging the social with informal, where you might actually leverage some of your existing e-learning courses. It could be smaller courses would be more useful, but bigger courses can also be leveraged, especially when there are experts who are guiding people to the right content. You could have documents, webinars, videos. All of these can really be leveraged in seeding the content, referring to the content, in leading people to the right sources, etc. And you can also look at user-generated content. There have been organizations who have actually trained people to use flip cameras. I don't think they are in fashion so much anymore, because your mobiles are really very capable of shooting good quality videos. But yes, you can train people on how to do things, and we'll talk about videos more specifically in the second half of this session today. But you will have to depend on user-generated content, because that will really become the backbone of what will be the knowledge capture and knowledge repository at the back end of your social learning initiative. The next point is about encouraging participation. You don't want a social initiative or social learning initiative rolled out and solutions being set up and everything is ready, but it's really a ghost town. Nobody comes in, nobody comments, nobody sees anything, etc. And participation is something which is quite difficult, as you saw in some of the barriers that were shown earlier. The top one was essentially people getting involved with that. What you could do with that is evangelize, essentially, in terms of what are the benefits and how it will help people themselves, and also get some C-level participation. I think organizations which have been successful in rolling out social learning initiatives have always had C-level participation, even to showcase that the CEOs are involved in that and they're doing these things. They're leading a certain set of groups and people in doing social learning. You could run campaigns which could be time-bound, especially in the initial phases, kind of rollout of your programs. Have some rewards. Maybe long-term rewards could be in form of gamifications if you do in your systems. You need to have some sort of curation responsibility for content, because not all content would be generated by you. So you would have to fetch that content maybe from, even if you have private set of tools, you may want to get content fetched from outside of that setup, from the general web, from free sources, from others, and then pull it into the internal repository. But remember that not everybody will contribute. There is this 99:1 kind of a ratio that has been given, that only 1% of people generally contribute fresh content, 9% just keep circulating that around, and 90% just look around, they are lurkers. This proportion can change as time progresses and people become more comfortable with social learning itself and sharing things and being able to share their views on a broader platform. And maybe even dependent on the type of organization you are, because it is ultimately about the culture that is there in the organization, about sharing and helping others and learning from others. Analytics is an area that you need to focus on to be able to show some value to these programs. Not that easy, but yes, if you were to think of linking it with business drivers and not just usage. A lot of organizations have obviously thought of If we have a comment on a certain thing, maybe it is good. So 2,000 comments is not necessarily better than 1,000 comments. What is really important is it impacting your business? So if you have set the objectives rightly earlier, it might help in improving or in measuring the success of those programs. So it is always easier, and you may want to begin with some of these, which is project-based social learning initiatives. Let's say improving a particular process in a particular department, and see if that impacts your business, and just do it through only social learning and see how it works. But things like that would be very important to at least get started. And you can look at more complex analytics engines in times to come. There are, of course, now enterprise systems which have sort of data streams that are being generated. So for anything that anybody does, even for work, not just for commenting and sharing things with others, but for what they do in terms of activities, that can also be captured. So you can possibly link those with what is happening, performance with social learning contributions. And lastly, it is about building culture. Social learning is not a 3-month initiative or a 6-month thing or a one project thing. It should ideally be an organization-wide thing where it should become daily routine, part of daily routine of your employees, where they are able to share things, they are able to search for things, they're able to comment, they're able to learn from each other, make sense of what they are seeing, what they are coming across, adding value to that on a regular basis. So in our view, to quickly recap, start with objectives, support with tools, set some policies, be ready about content, encourage participation, look at analytics, and essentially focus on long-term building culture in your organization around social learning. With that, I'd like to end just a quick slide on our product, Upside LMS, which itself has been well recognized in the social and informal segments. It has won 2 golds for blended or informal learning and 3 silvers on social learning technology from Brandon Hall in the last five years or so. So do check it out on the website if you wish to get started with social learning, especially on the social training aspect. And we differentiated social, or divided it into social training and social collaboration. So with that, I'd like to hand over to Jeevan for the second chapter.
Okay, thank you very much, Amit, and that was really interesting to see what's happening in the world of social learning. So before I begin, I just want to make sure that you can actually see my screen. So hopefully you can see my screen, which says "Do It Yourself DIY eLearning." So so DIY is a term that's quite commonly used for the work that we do around the house. So, the tap's broken, we obviously, before we go and hire an expensive plumber, we try and fix it ourselves, and if it doesn't work, sometimes we make it worse. We do call in the specialist, but we do give it a try because it's quicker, potentially it's cheaper, could be expensive if you mess it up, but certainly it is the effort to save time and money. So, the DIY in e-learning has increased over the past 10 years or so, partially because of the maturity of e-learning tools, processes, and also skill sets within the community. But an important part is also the use of consumer technology products, so smartphones, tablets, etc. They're kind of now very common and also very good, so that anybody without deep technical skills is able to develop fairly good media assets and online courses. So it's the contribution of things like rapid authoring tools, the availability of smartphones and tablets, the ease with which they can be processed, which has made DIY approach something that works very well. So in terms of just e-learning DIY, and I'm sure there are some in the audience who are into DIY and will recognize the components of the slide. Essentially, you can use rapid content development tools to develop online courses. You can also use kind of media objects, so there are pre-built simulations or off-the-shelf simulations which you can insert into your online course and make it more interactive and engaging without actually having to program that interactivity yourself. In terms of where the most action is happening is probably media, and that is where the easy availability of iPhones, tablets, cameras within them, and also recording facilities to make it easier to capture fairly good video and audio quality, and also produce graphics. So anybody who's got a tablet knows that there are graphic packages available for, or photoshopping kind of packages available for very cheap, and you're able to put in some special effects for those graphics. So it's all available, the tools are there, and certainly that is giving rise to DIY. So let's do a poll just to see how many of you, if you're doing DIY, for what you are using or what you're doing DIY for. So there are some choices on the screen, and I'm sure we'll get the poll. We'll see the poll very soon on the screen. So if you can, yeah, please respond to that poll. That'll be fantastic. Okay, so just trying to see how many people have voted. Yeah, we've got, I think, we've got a few polls. So we're happy to do it now and share the results at this point in time. So 40%. Okay, so coming up on your screen very soon will be the poll result. But essentially, 40% of you are using the rapid authoring tools to build courses. 40% are using all of the above choices, including recording videos. Not many are actually developing animation or recording audios, which is quite interesting and would be quite nice to hear from those who are actually who are doing DIY. Want to know from the chat box as to why you're not recording your own animation or audio, because there are tools available. Now it may be that you're not aware that these tools are available, or it may be that you don't have time to do that, but certainly these statistics kind of show that 80% of you are doing DIY in some shape and form. So I think we can close the result now, and yeah, so that's good. Let's do another poll very quickly. If you are doing DIY, and 80% of you are, can you tell us why why you're doing it? Is it because, and the poll will come up very soon, but is it because your job role requires it, you enjoy it, you have limited budget, it just saves time, or all of the above? So if you can respond to the poll on your screen, that'll be good. We've got about 30% who have voted on the screen, and numbers are coming up, so just give it another minute. Again, the responses, we'll just wait for another couple of seconds for people to respond, and I think we can close now. Yeah, so I think again 71% of the people who have responded are all-rounders. So that's quite interesting. So I think we can close the poll now and share it with the audience. And the results are that 71% do DIY for all the reasons above. 14% say because the job role requires it, and 14% is because there is limited budget. And that is quite interesting to see in terms of the limited budget. Nobody's actually responded saying I enjoy it. So that's quite interesting. So maybe we do DIY because we don't necessarily something that we enjoy, but have to do it because it's part of a job role or there is limited budget. Okay, of the 71% who've said all of the above,
Hi, Jeevan. Jeevan, I don't think we can hear you. Hi everyone. I think Jeevan has lost connection, so we'll just wait for a minute. I'm sure he's going to get back. Hi Jeevan.
If you can hear me, can you just raise your hands, please, just to see if you can hear me?
Yes, Jeevan, we can hear you now.
Excellent. So yeah, I just got an error, disconnected me. Let's continue. So let's have a look at a few statistics about why some of the big factors that are impacting HR and learning priorities. And this one's from the CIPD HR Outlook survey, and you can see that HR leaders and learning leaders are predominantly concerned with cost management. So what that means is, yep, sorry, I'll just do that. All right, now let me know if you can see it. Okay, all right, so I think we're there.
Yeah.
Right, so apologies for that, just some technical glitches, so let us continue. So essentially, one of the top priorities for HR and learning managers is cost management. Now, what that implies is not increasing the budget for HR and learning, but essentially reducing costs. And you can see that the pink lines are for the HR leaders, and the gray lines are for business leaders. Right? So that's so there's certainly a top priority. In fact, the business leaders are more concerned about cost than HR leaders. So certainly the cost reduction of budgets is reflected in the number of people who work in HR and are able to build and design and implement learning courses. Another next slide, again, to kind of back up the statistics, is statistics which asked in the UK about if the training budget for organizations had either increased, which is in gray, stayed the same, which is in dark purple, and decreased, which is kind of in light purple or lavender. And you can see that the dark purples and the lavenders dominate by a fair margin. So about 50 to 60% have kind of remained same. So this is in terms of the available resources, available funds, and headcount, right? So the headcount has either remained the same or decreased. In the public sector, actually, the headcount has gone down by 40. It's a big 47%. So certainly the number of people, the available funds and available resources for us learning folks has decreased over the years, which has given the impetus for doing more DIY in e-learning included. So here's some recommendations from ASTD about what to do in an environment where there is a reduced budget. First is to use technology-based learning applications, because what technology-based learning applications allow you to do is to build a course and then make it available to a lot of people for a lot of time. So the per head cost of development does come down. The logistics of organizing classroom training, etc., is also decreased. So essentially, it is one of the main methods of making the best of your budget. The second one is to kind of just concentrate on the really important things that are of value to the business. So certainly, I've spent quite a lot of time in the field of learning technologies, and I certainly have seen a shift towards purchasing habits which are focused on immediate needs and important needs, right? So some of the more exciting things in learning technologies are having a slower uptake because people are, I guess, reducing the need to experiment and have and the nice to haves. And finally, is to something that we've seeing a lot is essentially rationalizing or pooling the learning-related resources across organizations, and also there are even organizations that are kind of, or companies teaming up to share learning resources. So it's a far more sensible and smarter way. And of course, you might have to compromise if one resource is used by different departments or by different companies. But certainly, I think when cost management is a big factor, everything falls into place. But there is no free meal in life. So what happens when you, I guess, reduced, when you got a reduced budget? So essentially, if you've read any book on project management or from the real life experience you have, is that when you have to sacrifice something. So these are kind of represented by the three vertices of a triangle, and you pull one, the other two also get pulled in that direction. So it's if you can reduce cost, you can have less money, but you'll have to compromise on the quality, and also you'll have to compromise. You'll require more time to do it. Right. So if you want to develop a course in a hurry, that requires higher budget. If you want to develop a higher quality course, that is also requires a higher budget. And we're seeing compromises around both the time required and higher quality. The move towards time required reduction is by using DIY tools, and we're starting to see the production of media assets done by the L&D people themselves, which are being incorporated into the course. So another call on whether you would compromise on quality. So if you can have the poll showing up there, give us your answers. Whether would you compromise on quality if you had less money or less time? Yes to reduce cost, yes to save time, no, not at all, and kind of depends on the situation. So let's have a look at the responses coming in. We've got about 40% voted, so just wait for another 20 seconds while we can close the poll. And we've got some actually very interesting statistics coming up. Very interesting. So I think we can close the poll sometime soon and share it with the audience. Now, this poll is showing that 80% of you will not compromise on quality. That's interesting, because I guess if you have reduced budget, how do you maintain the quality if you are unable to hire the best? I guess if you are unable to hire video professionals or do the best editing, how can you get the really high quality? So what we're seeing in the market though is a little bit different from what the poll shows, is that people are compromising on quality, and businesses are understanding that, look, we're getting a lower an e-learning course with lower interactivity or engagement, or the video is not that polished. We are using we're kind of using local employees rather than professional actors, but that is fine because it's quicker and it's cheaper. So certainly we're seeing a lot of that in the market. So moving on, let's talk about before I move on to the next slide about DIY, what I want to make very clear is that DIY doesn't mean that you have to do everything yourself, right? It means that within the activities that need to be done, you do whatever you can, right? And then you call in the professionals to do the bits that you are not such an expert at, right? So that way you're actually kind of reducing cost and time. So it's you do what you do, and those things that you can't do, you get the professionals. So let's have a look at the three approaches towards developing e-learning. Number one is the professional. So you get the best people, best talent, best tools, and you produce a very high quality e-learning course. The other one, on the other extreme, is a home video approach, which is essentially you kind of take the tools that you have, shoot it yourself and do editing. So it's a little bit amateurish, but DIY sits somewhere in the middle where you do the bits, for example, taking the video yourself, but pass on the video to some professionals to do professional editing and engagement. So that is one thing that Upside Learning is starting to do a lot more, and we'll be talking about video in the next couple of slides. Is that one of the biggest costs for video is really the time it takes to shoot, right? So your digital cameras and smartphones are fairly good now to give you a fairly good resolution video. So the idea is you take the video using a smartphone and some employees, and then send it to the professionals to do the editing and interactivity. That way you get the best of both worlds while reducing the time and the cost involved. let's talk about video in particular. Why video? Because video is something that has a huge uptake in today's world. So, let's look at some of the statistics about YouTube, something that you're all familiar with. YouTube, there are about 1 billion unique visitors to YouTube every month, 6 billion hours of video watched every month, 100 hours of video uploaded every hour. So that's 2,400 hours of video uploaded in a day. So that's a huge amount of video, and consumption of video on mobile makes up almost 40% of the total consumption. Now, Upside Learning has its own YouTube channel, and the link is there on the screen. And we've got some really nice videos, especially on the animation that we've done. So if you are interested, you can go there and have a look at some of the animation that we are capable of delivering for you. This is some of the use cases for using video in learning or e-learning from the Flexible Learning Australia. They've kind of listed, including record face-to-face sessions for absent learners. So let us say you're having a classroom session, you record that so that people who have not been able to make it can watch the video. You can also make extra material for self-paced learning for classroom. In fact, that video can be made available before they come into the classroom. Share video recordings of guest speakers. Now, we had one customer who wanted this. Essentially, they were a global company. There was one guest speaker at one location in Sydney, so they wanted to record that and make that available to everybody across the globe, because it was a very valuable piece of presentation. Support learners with literacy or learning difficulties. So the video can be manipulated to include subtitles, so that and people can actually play the video at their own pace, stop and start, it allows them to do that. And certainly there are other user cases which can be used. So it is really limited by imagination. So what do you need for doing video? Now, this is thanks to one of our very close partners, Andrew Hannon in Sydney, who's I've actually borrowed the slides from Andrew, and Andrew is very much into the DIY approach, where Andrew does the initial shooting, and then that is sent off for processing to Upside to add the engagement. So essentially, what is required really is your something to shoot. Your phone is quite adequate. Samsung or iPhone, they've got fairly good resolution, or a digital camera, or the SLRs nowadays do have fairly good digital video taking capability. Even tablets can take a pretty good video. What is important though is the sound, right? So the sound is an important component which is not recorded very well with these devices, and for which now there are fairly reasonably priced equipment that you can attach to your smartphones, for example, to get better sound quality. So this is something that you may forget to do, but sound is extremely important, and so are things like a stand, so that the video is stable. And obviously you need a computer to download the video and edit it. And a couple of tips for taking your own videos: just make sure that you have the best location in the office with plenty of natural light, and it's got a clean look and feel for the video. The framing is quite important. A lot of when I was an amateur photographer, still am in a lot of respects, but essentially I kept the person in the middle of the photo, thinking that was the best. But the framing is quite important. You can see here on the image on your slide, the person is actually on the left, so it gives a lot more depth and context to the picture. And finally, lighting. Now you don't, if you can get a well-lit room, that will be fairly all right if you don't have the professional lighting equipment. Now, obviously, if you've got the lighting equipment, that's fantastic. But if you don't, you can certainly use a very well-lit room with a lot of natural light coming. And in terms of recording, just make sure that you got a couple of takes, just in case that you can choose from the best of the 2 or 3 takes that you have recorded. In terms of software, there's plenty of software available on your PC. tablets and even smartphones to edit your videos. So essentially they allow you to cut bits of video out and join them with other videos, add a title slide, etc. As you can see that there's some also available on the cloud, but certainly there are lots of tools. I know I've personally got about 2 to 3 tools on my iPad which allow me to do fairly decent video editing. So certainly keep it simple if you're doing your own DIY video. Look at this picture about the a good video and a bad video. So here's a person, the bad video of person taking the taking a selfie video, I guess, and he's got his goggles on, eyes are not not visible, and also the framing. You can see that it's kind of phrased the center of his mouth in there. But if you look at the other picture, now that is really good because it's again framed to the left, which seems to be left rather than right seems to be preference. But you can also see that there is a lot more in that picture. In fact, there is something on the whiteboard which is quite easy to see and understand. So that gives a lot more depth and context for the video. So why do it? Let's have a look at some of the cost heads involved. Actors, so they may cost money. Video producer, somebody who has good technical knowledge about, this is for a high-end video production. So actors, video producer, a studio, sometimes with a green screen, and then you've got the production where once a video is shot, there's audio and video production and editing happening. You've got the equipment. Some of them can be very, very expensive and very pricey. Software, the high-end software to edit the videos. So you can see that the costs do add up for a high-end professional video, right? But using the DIY approach, you can work this to reduce the overall costs. So here are some of the suggestions, right? Get somebody in your team to act it out, and that's we've got a lot of feedback that sometimes that actually works very well because it's quite authentic and it's got more acceptance. The video producer, shoot it yourself. Just make sure that do a little bit of homework in terms of the lighting, the framing, etc., and you can come up with a decent video. Studio, identify sometimes you've got an internal resource. Maybe there is a marketing department has a room, or just use a well-lit room. You will need to spend some time and a little bit of money to learn the skills to edit the audio and video. Equipment, hopefully you've got a decent enough camera, tablet, or a digital camera to do the trick. And software, there's free software available, or like I said, even software that is available for very low price. So this is how you can reduce the effort involved and the cost involved, but obviously you just need to be aware that it is not going to compare to the professionally shot and edited video. So there is going to be a difference, and it's going to be quite clear, but what you're saving is money, and that is what is less of in training budgets nowadays. So again, let's go to the slide in terms of the DIY approach, and let's look at the bits that you can do it yourself and where you really should engage somebody who's an expert or has the required software and the skills to do it efficiently and quickly, somebody like Upside Learning. So that needs analysis, for example, you can do it yourself, but get the technical experts to actually tell you what format of video, what frame rate, and what how much lighting, etc. is required, so they can supply you technical specifications. The storyboarding and scripting you can do yourself, but get some help from the external experts in terms of the advice they give around storyboarding videos. Right? Shoot the video yourself or within the company, and what you do then is that if you do want to make the video engaging by adding animation or cartoons and concepts, you can certainly give it to the experts to do that. Once that is done and you've got the finished video, you can incorporate that using a rapid authoring tool, or you can give it to people like Upside Learning who develop the whole course. And evaluation, of course, nobody's in a best position to do than yourself. So you can see it's a division of labor at what you can do yourself, and then trying to outsource or get the experts involved so that you get a pretty good quality video. That can be. So here's the DIY approach. So whether it's video, whether it's audio, whether it's building rapid authoring tools, do use a mix of your own skills, the tools that you have available, the resources that you have, and bring in experts where, if and when required. So let's last poll, and we're pretty much coming to the end of the presentation. Quick one. So which kind of DIY are you interested in? Professional? Do you just want to use everybody who are experts DIY, or the home video approach? So a quick poll. It shouldn't take very long at all. So we're getting starting to get some responses. So far so good. Looks like our messages have gone through. 75% say DIY, 17% say home video approach. Oh, okay. All right. So another couple of seconds and we can close the poll. Thank you. So yeah, so looks like we've got some inspired people within the audience. We could close the poll now. Yep, and share that. Yep. So 88% want to do DIY, and I hope that this webinar has been valuable in terms of providing some tips, but also giving some advice as to which parts you can get the experts in. So yeah, look, thank you very much for that. So essentially, the DIY approach reduce cost, and also by using a mix of your own time, skills, and resources, and external expertise to give you the best possible result for the best possible cost, right? And while maintaining the best possible effectiveness and learner engagement. So that's I guess the crux of the DIY approach. With that, that's the last of my slides. Probably I just want to kind of get in Amit, quickly for his comments about what Amit is seeing around the globe for the DIY approach. And while Amit is doing that, if you've got any questions, we'll be very, very happy to answer them. Please send it through the chat box, and we will take it up. So that way. So yes, Amit, over to you, just in terms of any comments.
Yeah, I think especially with the tools like Articulate, Lectora, now Storyline, and others, there has been a lot of DIY that's happening on e-learning itself. Not necessarily so much with the video aspect, but yes, normal e-learning has good levels of DIY, especially in large organizations. And they typically try and maintain a balance between whether they want to do a whole lot of it internally or all of it internally, or they just keep the required stuff, something which is always required on an emergency basis to be done internally, the rest is outsourced. But yes, I think the tools had really enabled because they had grown in capacities and capabilities, and DIY has become an important feature for a lot of organizations.
Thank you, Amit. I'm kind of waiting for any questions, but don't see any. So hopefully we've answered all your questions. So with that, thank you very much for coming and attending our webinar, and we look forward to certainly answering any questions that you may have, either through an email. If you can send it to us, we'll get back to you. This recording will be available, so if you've got other team members who wish to watch this, that'll be fantastic. We'll send you the link. But again, well, thank you very much, and we hope that you start your DIY and social journey very soon, and we can be of help. Thank you very much.